Welcome to the Traveling Flaneur podcast, where I'll talk about the economy, politics, history, and culture of the places I've visited. I'll also give you travel tips, recommend places to visit, things to do, and the best food. The life of a flaneur is that of an observer, a person who wanders aimlessly with eyes always open to any opportunity. It is a person who is in no hurry and prefers the journey over the destination. I believe that in this hurried world we live in, we need more flaneurs, and I hope you enjoy the perspective from a traveling flaneur and maybe become one in your next trip. Hi, and welcome again to Toronto. In this episode, I will continue the list of places that I recommend that you visit in Toronto, and if you missed my last episode, I recommend that you listen to it because in that one, I presented the most iconic and touristy places to visit in Toronto. In today's episode, I will continue with this list, but instead, I'm going to include less touristy places and places that are also less known, but still that I consider that you should visit when you are in Toronto. And the first one is going to be Toronto's Times Square, which is called the Dundas Square. So here you're going to find huge screens, bright lights, people protesting and screaming, live events, a little bit of the chaos that you find in the actual Times Square in New York. And although it is not as nice or pretty as the New York Times Square, many people compare Dundas Square with Times Square, and it's definitely a place that I think you should visit. Some people like visiting Dundas during the night to watch all of the lights, but I would recommend not visiting it super late at night because this place has a lot of homeless people that are usually with drug addiction problems. So I wouldn't say it's a nice area to be walking around at night, but I would definitely include it in your visit to Toronto. Another place that you should visit is going to be called the Gooderham Building, and this one is one of the most beautiful buildings to see in Toronto, according to many. This building is one that is also compared to another place in New York that's called the Flatiron Building, and it is definitely one of the most photographed corners in Toronto. In front of this building, you're going to find a very nice park called Bercy Park. And this one I also recommend that you visit. They have a fountain in the middle of the park. And if you go to this park, you're going to be able to see the view of the murals that are painted on the back of Gooderham Building. So I think these are also worth it, and you should include these two places in your visit to Toronto. My next recommendation would be visiting Nathan Phillips Square, where the iconic Toronto sign is going to be located. And also this square is going to be very popular because during the winter months, they are going to put an ice skating rink over here. And during other months, you're going to have some art exhibitions here or some cultural events. So I think you should go to Nathan Phillips Square because you might find some cultural events. And if not, you will just take a photo with the big Toronto sign. Another place that I think you should visit, and that's a little bit more hidden from tourists, is going to be the Graffiti Alley, which is for sure the most colorful street to see in Toronto. Because as its name suggests, it's going to be a street that's full of graffitis and murals, and it reminded me a little bit of Calle del Embudo in Chorro de Quevedo back in Bogota, which is my home country, Colombia. And over here, this is a little street that's very tiny and narrow, and you find many different graffitis from many different artists and themes. So if you like street art, it's definitely a must stop visiting the Graffiti Alley. And then my recommendation number 23, it's going to be visiting the Eaton Centre, which is the biggest and the most important shopping mall in Toronto, with over 300 different stores in the mall. But the best thing about it, it's not only the mall, but it's that it's a mall that goes kind of underground. And this was the origin of an underground city, let's say, that's called the Path. And this is going to be my next recommendation because it is estimated that there are around 30 kilometers of underground corridors in Toronto, which are especially popular during the winter because they can transport you around the city without you having to go outside. And so they are connecting many places in the city, and how it works is that usually you would start at a random building, so it can be a condo building or it can be Eaton Center, and you start going down and you'll see signs that say the Path. And then you can start connecting through this underground paths, as the name says, and eventually you would get to another place. But as you can imagine, this is going to be a little bit like a maze. And even for me, I've been a year here in Toronto and I still don't understand entirely the path. I keep getting lost because it's not working similar to streets where you can just walk parallel to one or cross another thing. So it's going to be a little bit confusing, and especially because sometimes you have to enter lobbies of skyscrapers to join the path. So it's going to be a little bit weird, but I definitely think that you should explore it because it's one of the most important things that Toronto people visit all the time. And the easiest points to explore it without getting super lost are going to be from the Eaton Center or from Union Station. From Union Station, you'll find the biggest part of the path. And this is my next recommendation because Union Station is going to be kind of like the central station of Toronto, and it is going to have very nice architecture inside out. And another thing that's nearby to Union Station is going to be the financial district. And this is going to be the area that all of the buildings and skyscrapers of all the big banks in the country are located. So Canada has 5 big banks. They are going to be CIBC, TD, RBC, BMO, and Scotiabank, and all of these offices you're going to find them nearby in Bay Street. So it's going to be similar a little bit again to New York with Wall Street, but this is going to be a smaller financial district. It's Bay Street, but it's a different and interesting area to walk and discover. And if you're walking around this financial district, you might also find places like The Well, which is an outdoor shopping mall, and it's also very, very nice. Near the financial district, you will also find what is called the Harbourfront, which is going to be an area that has a street in front of Lake Ontario and is one of my favorite areas to walk in Toronto. Here you're going to find parks and trails that give you incredible views of the lake, but there are also galleries, theaters, and literary events. You could also walk along the harbourfront from the Humber Bay Arc River Bridge to the ferry port, and this is going to be a walk that will take you around 3 to 4 hours. And how I usually do it is taking a TTC or an Uber that leaves me in the Humber Bay Arc Bridge, and then I'm going to be walking back to the ferry port. And that's going to leave me in my next recommendation, which is going to be take a ferry to the Toronto Islands. The ferry ticket is going to cost you around $9 round trip, and over there you'll see that there are several ferries that are leaving to various parts of the island. My recommendation would be visiting Ward's Island because from here you're going to have the best views in all of Toronto. And also, adding up to the views, you can rent a bike to ride around the island, or you can go kayaking or paddling, and even renting bikes as a group. So you can rent these bikes that are for like 2 people or 4 people and do it together. It's a very, very nice thing and place to visit when it's a sunny day. And this place is, to me, one of the best tourist secrets in Toronto. And I would highly recommend that you bring food, make a picnic, and enjoy the views and do some, if not all, of these activities. My favorite personal one is kayaking. And this is definitely one of the best things to do in Toronto because it will give you a view from Lake Ontario into the city. And these views, again, are the best views that you can get. And well, talking about picnics, parks, and nature, I had told you that Toronto was a very green city, but maybe I didn't specify how green it was. When I look at numbers, actually 18% of the city is made up of parks, and there are going to be more than 1,500 parks, totaling more than 10 million trees in the city. There are a few parks that are going to be worth visiting. The first one is going to be Trinity Bellwoods Park, which, although it's not the largest, is definitely the most popular park in town for locals, as it is close to many restaurants and it has tennis courts, trails for walking or biking, and picnic tables. If we go to the biggest park of all, it's going to probably be High Park, which I haven't even walked around all of it because it's so big, but it has lots of trails, and in the spring it's definitely one of the best places to visit because you can see all of the sakura, which are the cherry blossoms. There is another park that I recommend that's called the Riverdale Park, and this one's going to give you very nice views of the city. And there's another one called Trillium Park that is near the harborfront area. And this one is also going to give you amazing views of the city, combining the lake and the skyscrapers. So for all of these parks, I would highly recommend just taking a bag of food and creating a picnic over there and enjoying the views and the sunny days of Toronto. And in a similar vein, I am going to recommend 2 trails that you can do in Toronto in case you want to do some hiking or walking, and they are going to be a nice escape into nature. If you want a short trail, I would recommend the K. Gardiner Beltline Trail, which is going to be around 8 kilometers round trip, and it will take you about 1 hour and 40 minutes to hike. It is very nice, very easy, so it's very, very flat. It's perfect if you just want to get your steps in and enjoy the sun. If you want a longer trail, then you can take the Humber River Trail. This one is going to be a little bit over 15 kilometers just one way. So it will take you around 4 hours to do it, and how I would recommend it is that you find in Google Maps one of the places where you can start the trail up in the north, and then you can walk down, because this is going to be the easiest way to do this path. And well, if you also have time to go to the outside of Toronto, you could go to the Scarborough Bluffs Park, and this one's going to offer stunning views of Lake Ontario from its high cliffs, and it's the ideal place to go to do a hike and also enjoy a picnic or relax by the beach. And now that I'm talking about beaches, if you want to go to a beach in Toronto, I would highly recommend the Woodbine Beach. This one's probably the largest and the most famous beach in Toronto, and it is a very, very popular place during the summer. Also, it is located in an area that's called The Beaches, and this is a very nice neighborhood to visit in case you want to also be wandering around like a flaneur. My last 4 recommendations are going to be a little bit more cultural, and they're going to be different neighborhoods that you have to visit in Toronto. The first one is going to be Kensington Market, which is a district that's full of life and color, and it's known for having a little bit of a hippie and alternative vibe. And here you're going to find several vintage stores, graffiti, coffee shops, and also good Latin American restaurants. So I think this is a place that you should visit if you like this kind of bohemian neighborhood. Augusta Street is going to be the most distinctive street in this neighborhood, so be sure to walk down that street. And also while you're walking, you should find your way up to Spadina Street. And if you get here, you're going to be entering Chinatown, which I think is personally one of the best Chinatowns in all of North America. Here you're going to really feel like you've arrived to another city, because all of the signs are going to change to Chinese. Even the Canadian stores or banks, for example, have their names in Chinese. And you're going to be able to see Chinese supermarkets, street stores, neon signs, Chinese graffiti, and lots of places to enjoy Chinese food. The tram stations here are also going to have dragons on their poles, and so everything is incredible. It's a neighborhood that I highly recommend that you visit because it allows you to see the cultural diversity of Toronto. And similar to this one, there are other 2 that I would highlight. First, there's Koreatown, which although is not as big as Chinatown, the poles are also decorated. You will find a lot of Korean restaurants and also Korean stores, tea places, Korean desserts, everything. So I highly, highly recommend it. And then the last neighborhood that I would recommend visiting in my recommendation number 40 in Toronto is going to be visiting Greektown. Greektown, again, as the name says it, is going to have lots of Greek restaurants, stores with fresh fruit. It's going to be close to this huge bridge of almost half a kilometer that's going to connect Greektown with downtown Toronto. And this bridge is called Prince Edward Viaduct. If you visit this bridge, you're going to find that it's a very old bridge. It's over 100 years old, and currently it has some lights that are called the luminous veil and its ends. So this is going to serve for 2 things. First, at night, it's going to illuminate the bridge and make it very pretty. But second, and mostly why they put these lights, is going to prevent people from jumping off. Because, weird fun fact, This was the second bridge with most suicides in all of North America, just behind the Golden Gate Bridge. But so they added all of the slides to prevent people from jumping, and now it doesn't have that ranking. Now it's better. So if you want to visit that place, it's going to connect you to Greektown, which is also highly, highly recommended. And with this, I complete all my 40 recommendations of Toronto. 40 places that I think you should visit in 2 weeks approximately, but if you stay less days, you should prioritize which ones you would truly want to visit. In my next episode, I'm going to recommend you my favorite plan in all of Toronto, which is going to be try food from all over the world, and I will give you a list of my favorite restaurants in the city. If you like this episode, please share it with someone else who loves to travel and give me a review, because this helps me tremendously and it motivates me to give you more travel tips. Subscribe and stay tuned for more episodes, and tell me in the comments if there's anything that surprised you or if there's any advice that you found very useful. And I hope to see you next week to taste the world cuisines in just a single city. Enjoy your trip!